Good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening, or wherever you are in this lovely world of ours. You are watching the Yorkshire Bike Mechanic. My name's Dave K, and I hope you're all well. And today, squealing brakes. Yes, squealing brakes. How many of you have been out with someone who's ridden the bike and the brakes have been squealing like a mad raving banshee? I bet you have, or you have squealing brakes yourself. Well, I'm going to try and help you sort them out. We're going to talk about why your brakes squeal in the first place and what we can do to try and stop it. Let's crack on. Proper squealing brakes. Are they squealing or what? That's mad, isn't it? You'd be surprising how common that is. Any kind of bike with a disc, you can get that kind of screeching noise, and it does your head in, as well as everybody that you're riding with, it'll do their head in and all. And they'll constantly moan at you until you get it sorted out. So I'm hopefully going to try and help you sort it out, to be honest, and go through the reasons why brakes squeal to begin with. So there's a few reasons why brakes squeal. First of all, it could be because that you've run out of pad, okay, which happens quite a lot, and you're actually running on metal, okay, which is no good for your brake or your rotor or your ears or anybody else's ears. So it could be that. It could be that there's no life left in your pads. The other reason is that there's contamination on your pads, which is a likely reason, to be honest. So brake contamination with oil or something similar is one of the main reasons why your brakes squeal like that. It could be that you've got overspray from somewhere else. You've been cleaning your bike and you've oversprayed your discs accidentally, and that will cause contamination of your pads. So what we need to do is let's have a look at the caliper first. So let's whip this caliper off then. Let's have a quick look and we'll see what's going on. All we need to do basically is undo these two 5mm screw cap heck Allen type bolts. And we'll just undo those, and that'll give us access to the caliper underneath. Okay, so what we need to check for is mucky calipers underneath, and I'm talking about oil discoloration. Now this actually, I mean, obviously there's muck under there, which is fine, but it looks pretty dry, to be honest. It doesn't look as though there's any oil out of there. I could be wrong, because oil, any tiny little bit of oil you get on these pads, it will squeak. It will make your brakes squeak, and that's just a tiny drop, if that. Any kind of oil on there will make it squeak. You can't get it off either. Okay, a lot of people said, I think I've got oil on my pads, how am I going to clean that off? Well, you can't. Once you've got oil on them pads, people have tried putting them in oven, they've tried eating them up, they've tried washing them in spirits. You cannot get the oil out of that fibre pad. Once it's in there, you've got to use new brake pads. So although it looks pretty clean, okay, we could be wrong. There could be a tiny little bit of oil on them pads. The reason why we could get oil on these pads is because there's a few reasons. Firstly, someone could have bled it and let mineral oil run down there and find its way onto these pads. That's a good reason why that happens. It could be that these particular pistons inside, can you see these 4 pistons there? I'm hoping you can. Them 4 pistons inside there, they're just, they're basic. I mean, they're mechanical things, and so they can fail, and there's seals around the outside, and fluid can get out. So if one of them seals fails, or you get excessive wear on these pistons, you can get a little bit of leakage of oil through the side of the piston, which will eventually work its way onto your pad. That could cause your squeal on your brake. So how do we know? How do we know then that if there's oil coming out of there, or if it's been oversprayed? How do we find that out? Okay, well, there's a simple way of doing it. First of all, what we need to do is we need to clean this caliper under here first before we do anything else. So let's go ahead and just get a dry cloth and we'll just clean the loose stuff off underneath. Now you've got to start off with a clean cloth. Okay, so find yourself a clean cloth and just rub and just get any loose off on there, okay? So you can actually see the bottom of them pads and the bottom of the pistons as well. And I'll tell you for why in a second, okay? So that's a lot cleaner than what it was. We're also cleaning this adapter here as well. Just make sure that's clean. So we'll bob that back on there. Just slide it over there. And we'll just put a nut back on. Don't need to tighten it up, we'll just use one, and I'll tell you for why. What we're going to do is we're going to test these pistons to see if they're leaking. Okay, we'll just leave it like that for now, just loose, okay? Don't need to be tight. Okay, we're going to test this caliper for leaks, and how we do that is we set up the lever so it's under continuous pressure. So let's go up to bar. So we've cleaned the back caliper. Now what we need to do is we need to put pressure on this lever. And I use a tie wrap. Okay, you need a fairly decent sized tie wrap. And you pump your lever up. Okay, pump it up till it gets hard. If it's not hard already. Okay, we know on this particular bikes it needs new pads. We're going to have to put new pads in anyway because they're contaminated in either way. So what we'll do is we'll pump that up and we'll wrap a tie wrap round the bar, through over the front of the lever, like that, okay? And we'll tighten it up and squeeze that brake tight. Not as tight as you can, but you need to be able to make it so there's loads of pressure now built up in that particular hydraulic line down to that caliper. So once we've done that, okay, we can kind of have a feel of it and we can get an idea of how tight that is. So once we've done that, we need to leave the bike. Okay, leave it overnight, just like that as it is. And then we come back in the morning, okay? So the first thing that we need to do when we come back in the morning is check this caliper. So let's go back. Okay, so what we're looking for now, don't forget this bike's been like this overnight, okay, under pressure. So what we're looking for the next morning is any weepage of oil under them pistons, okay? Don't forget we can't take this caliper off just yet, okay? So we put a finger under there, see if there's any wet, any evidence of any oil on both sides, okay? All around, okay? If there's evidence of wetness there, oil wetness, then you know you've got a leak in your piston. So let's undo the tie wrap. We'll get a snips and we'll cut this tie wrap off that we've put on yesterday, and we'll take this caliper back off again, okay? So we didn't actually fasten this up, we just left it loose. And we'll take this caliper back off. And again, we're looking for any evidence of oil. Okay? If you see any evidence of oil under there, off the bottom of the pistons, you've got a leak. If you've got a leak on your caliper. And this caliper will need to be replaced. If it's Shimano, we'll need to replace this caliper. Hope we can service it and put new pistons and seals in. But Shimano, it's got but this is a non-serviceable item, really it is. Some people have tried to service them, but it's just not worth it. So yeah, this needs replacing. Okay, If, for example, that is dry as a bone, as it was when you left it the day before, you know there's a good chance that somehow oil's got on those pads. Now it could be from overspray, like we said before, or it could be that it's been bled and a little bit of oil's run round, or you've picked something up off the trail, or when you've been out on the bike you've picked a little bit of oil up, a little bit of diesel or something, because that's all it'll take. If that's the case and it's still dry, put some brand new pads in, set it back up on your bike, bleed it if you need to, okay, bed them in, wear them in, ride your bike, and then see how you go, okay. Come back and follow that process again. So that is a brilliant tip that you probably don't hear of in many places, but that's a good way of checking to see if you've got any weepage of oil from your caliper. If that's the case, then that needs to be replaced. If it's dry as a bone and it will like it was when you left it, there's a good chance that it's not your pistons. You're going to have overspray or something on there, on your pads. So do that. Put some new pads in and ride it. If you find you've still got squealing after you've worn them in, then it's worth revisiting that process. It might be that it does leak a little bit of oil and we've not spotted it, in which case you're probably going to need to replace that caliper. But by putting it under test like that gives you an indication of whether it's actually leaking oil or not. And if you come back the next day and that lever is back to the bar and it's lost all the pressure that you put on it, it could be there's a leak on your bar lever, maybe. Might not affect your caliper or your brake, but it identifies other faulty areas within that brake line. It could be that you've got a leak elsewhere, which you need to sort out. So it's identifying leaks in your system. Yeah, so if you've got a squeaky brake, those are the things to look at. Hope that helped. Toodle pip.